Brittany?
Yep. Ross, you ready? Perfect.
Awesome.
Yep, we're all set.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Mary Ann Dorman. I'm the CEO at the Thermopolis Chamber, and I'm also a parent of a third grader. And I want to thank everybody for taking the time and coming to the stakeholders interview. Couple of things. At the doors when you came in, there's some yellow sheets because we do need your feedback. And they also have QR codes throughout the back area because we do want your feedback on what you think about the candidates also. And so I'm going to go ahead and I will have the candidates introduce themselves, and then we will be asking some questions. The questions were submitted by the community, and what they did is they consolidated them. So we will try to get through all the questions, but I want to thank you guys for coming. So the first person I want to have introduce themselves is Brad Neuendorf.
Thanks, Mary Ann, and thank you guys for being here. I know it's a busy time of year for everybody, and it's spring, so thank you all for coming in to attend, and hopefully you get out of it what you need. I am Brad Neuendorf. I am the very proud principal of Lander Valley High School, currently in Lander, and I've been there for this is my 10th year. I was 4 years prior to that the assistant principal at Lander Valley High School, so I often joke that I had the easiest transition to a principalship possible because I knew the building, I knew the people, I knew how to run the phones and the computers, and I've been able to be just super happy in Lander as we've made a lot of progress and just done a lot of cool things in Lander. So thank you so much for having me be a part of this today. And I'm off to a great start here. Your schools are amazing. Your kids are amazing. I just got off my school tour and met with, I think, 5 different students who gave me the tour and just absolutely made my entire day. So if nothing else happens well today, meeting those young kids has been a great start. So thank you again.
Okay, and then we'll hear from Steve Birch.
Good afternoon, I'm Steve Birch. I'm currently the principal in Star Valley at the middle school there. I've been assistant principal at the high school level there in Star Valley as well. And been a teacher. I taught for 10 years in science and just looking for an opportunity to grow, and I appreciate y'all giving up your lunch hour or taking you away from the busy things you're doing to be here to hear from us today. So thank you.
Thank you. And then we have Jason Fuss.
Thank you. Jason Foos.
Foos. I'm sorry.
I've never heard Fuss.
Fuss. Fuss might be fun, though.
My name is Jason Foos. I'm from Sweetwater County. I've spent 26 years working in both districts there, Sweetwater 1 and Sweetwater 2. Currently, I serve as the assistant superintendent in Green River. I've been in that position for 5 years. Prior to that, head high school principal, elementary principal, and teacher and coach. It's an honor to be here. My wife is in the auditorium in the yellow sweater there, so please let her know that you appreciate us being here, and it's an honor to be here. The tour this morning, I just really enjoyed. We had tour guides, students were tour guides at the middle school, the high school, and 2 tour guides at the elementary, and really enjoyed meeting the staff and meeting the students, and it's been an absolute pleasure to be here up until this point. Thank you.
Awesome. And if you just want to hold on to it.
Okay.
You'll be the first one in the hot seat, okay? So the first question we have, how do you plan to involve parents in education of their children?
I think this is an answer that can be a really windy answer, but I think the number one thing to involve parents is their voice needs to be heard on the decision making of the school. I know the district is working on a potential 4-day school week. The district is always taking a look at curriculum and all of those things. The real involvement is a genuine interest on parent groups' input. I think it's easy to stand up here and say the podcast, the emails. I read the expansive newsletter last night, and very impressive, the performance here at Hot Springs #1. But you need to seek parents out. You need to invite them to the decision-making table. You need to be genuine, and you need to be honest. I also think one of the bigger things to involving parents is relationships with parents, being visible in the community, taking part in activities, and creating opportunities to speak to the superintendent and to get to know you and develop a level of comfort so that that communication can start to happen and parents have the courage to come in. But I think newsletters, websites, all of those things, but I really prefer the traditional, sincere part of the decision-making process with parents.
Thank you. And Brad, the same question to you. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
I was just sitting there wondering if I was going to get the same question or a different question, so I wasn't knowing if I was adding to the response or thinking of something completely new. I would start with where Jason left off, which is really the relationship piece. I think so much is given and earned through just being visible in the community and really being an active part of this community. This is a small but super proud community, and its people want to be celebrated, and it wants to just be all taken in. And so I've done so much with just the activities portion and just really making sure that I'm at everything I can possibly be at while being the principal at Lander Valley High School, because so much conversation and communication happens at those kind of activities and events. But I think the other part is that you really just have to be super relational and open-minded, and also just be a really super good active listener. Parents are going to have concerns, and I need to be a person that they feel very comfortable in bringing those concerns to. But I think the important part to also remember in this, in our position, is that there's a chain of communication for those things, and that parents have a vested interest, and the most important interest in this district, but they need to follow the proper chain of communication as well. And that's outlined in multiple things that I've seen from Hot Springs County School District #1, and making sure that they've talked to the teacher directly before they come to the superintendent. And if they aren't happy with the teacher, going to the principal. And if they're not happy with the principal, then you continue to grow up that. That doesn't mean the first time they get to talk to me is when they've had a problem not solved for 3 steps or levels. But when it gets to those serious things, we've got to follow those chains. And then the rest of the time, we're just proactively ears on the ground and boots on the ground, trying to make sure that we're taking care of everybody's interests, because there's a lot of different vested interests that we've got to meet and take care of as we try to make sure that we're doing the very best that we can for each and every student here each and every day.
Thank you. And Steve?
Yes.
Do you need the question again?
No,
or?
I think I've got it. It's kind of hard to follow that. I think everything that's been said is very important. And, you know, what I try to do is put myself in your shoes. I have a son that's a freshman. I have a daughter that's a 6th grader. They're going to be, you know, kids that I'm hoping people are listening to their concerns. And so for me, the trust piece is most important. So I trust their teachers. I trust that they have their best interests in mind. But more important than that, they have every student's best interest in mind. And I think that a quality candidate has everyone's interest in mind and is able to take the concerns of the individual, but also apply that to the whole group and make decisions for whole group, what's best for the whole group. And so I think all of us and myself would want to make decisions that are best for the whole group and doing what's right for kids. And I'm invested in that because I've got kids in the system as well. And so if I was here, I'd want what's best for my kids just as much as you want what's best for your kids. So.
Great, thank you. And if you want to hold you'll be the first one up. Okay. The next question, recruiting and retaining quality staff members is of great importance to the stakeholders of Hot Springs County School District. Given the national-wide teacher shortage and challenges with retention, what do you believe would be effective in attracting and retaining exceptional educators to Hot Springs County?
I think right off the bat, you have a wonderful place to live. I think that in itself is a draw. I think when you start talking about real problems, though, you start talking about things like declining enrollment. I think we're victims of that. I don't know if Thermopolis is, but I imagine that that's something that you're thinking about. I think being proactive of growing your own teachers. I think the more we can do to create teacher prep programs for our high school students, getting them, seeing that that is a viable option for them. They're already connected in the community. Let's bring our best and brightest back to the community and carry on the tradition of helping kids grow and learn. And so I think anything we can do to build our own is the starting point. And then making our teachers that we have feel valued. If I feel valued, I want to stay and be a part of something. If I'm not feeling valued, then I'm going to look elsewhere. And so I think it's really important to make sure that each one of our teachers feels that the work they're doing, number one, is beneficial and that it's seen and valued. So that would be my steps.
Great, thank you. Okay, and Brad?
Yeah, I had this question earlier today, and I think so much of it starts with just retention. This place has amazing teachers and staff already. There's a reason why I'm here and on this stage. This is the first superintendent job that I've applied for, and it's because the reputation of this district and this school precedes itself. There's amazing things that are happening in this school. So I think the first task is to make sure that people are happy here and that we have positive, inviting, welcoming places that we celebrate. And we celebrate them internally and we celebrate them externally, because the external celebrations is exactly why your reputation precedes you throughout the state, and the Hot Springs County School District 1 is one that can be boasted about across the state of Wyoming. And so retaining those great staff members and continuing to grow them and develop them and to treat them as professionals and allow them to continue to exceed their own expectations by working closely in collaborative groups in their professional learning community model with each other, but then also being able to get outside of this state and take some professional leave and going to places where they're going to start to feel even more emboldened in their practices and the things that they're doing, and really starting to even get these teachers to share their message with others, because they've got a lot to share. So I think that's part of it. And then the retention and development piece is that. The recruiting piece is difficult, but I think Hot Springs County School District number 1 is off to a great start. They've done some things with the daycare and the early learning center, and then they've also done the staff housing pieces. And to my knowledge, it looks like they've been really working hard at trying to make the salaries as competitive and the benefits package as competitive as possible. And so I think looking at all of those things and making sure that we take that as our priority, that our students are our number one priority, and we know we can't take care of our students without taking care of our staff. So staff have to follow right in there. How do we best take care of them and make sure that they're valued and appreciated, not only in a culture that's rich in celebration, but also in how we take care of them and allow them to go to the grocery store and take care of their basic needs as well. So I think it's a lot of things, and there's a lot of things going on right now, but I think the most that we can do to celebrate the great work that's already going on will go a long ways in continuing to do that.
Thank you.
Recruiting and retention is definitely a concern all across Wyoming. And when we were taking a look at becoming a potential candidate here at Thermopolis, take a look at, okay, teacherages and the daycare and some of the things that are already happening here at Thermopolis. And so a really nice baseline for recruitment and retention already in place. But I think the bottom line, when we look at retaining our employees, they need to be valued, they need to feel part of something, they need to have the camaraderie. And I think that is the piece that really needs to happen in all districts across the state of Wyoming. And I'm not saying it's not happening here, but finding methods outside of the teacherage, the daycare, those things, where people in the system hit 5-year marks, 10-year marks, and added benefits that could potentially come with those things, I think is a real key component to retention. I think also examining, I know the district is just examining some of the insurance plans, having plans that are in place that outweigh the benefit packages in other districts. For example, potentially counseling services or some of those things that can help younger teachers of the affordability piece, but the package that is needed at this day and age. And I think those are all things wrapped up into one, and not to regurgitate what these two gentlemen said early, but I think the bottom line is a togetherness, a camaraderie, a community that everybody feels proud to be a part of, packages that in terms of benefits, that it's, if I want to go over the hill to Shoshone, I'm giving up a great insurance package to do so. And I'm giving up a longstanding tradition of the grow within, teachers who have become principals in the system. And I think those are things that need to be sustained and built upon here in Thermopolis to deal with a not only local problem, but a statewide problem and a national problem. We need to sell also the teaching profession and the profession of education. And I think the superintendent needs to have that piece to the students in the system, that this is a wonderful, wonderful profession to be in. The amount of camaraderie and the relationships you can have and the amount of impact of impacting children, I think those are all things that we as a staff need to model. I talked to some of the seniors today. She was interested in being a pharmacist, but one of the seniors did say, I'm interested in being a teacher, and tell me a little more about that, and I'm very proud of you. So being stewards for the profession as well is one thing that I think ultimately can come back and help with that recruitment and retention. But once folks are here, we need 5-year checkpoints, 10-year checkpoints, 20-year checkpoints of incentives to get them to stay, and then having that wonderful community that makes them consider coming here in the first place. I think those are some things building off of what these two gentlemen said until this point. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Brad. We have been operating with a PLC mindset in the district and growing in many ways. What is your understanding of the PLC culture, and how have you specifically used this to improve your district or building?
Yeah, great question. We at Lander Valley High School have also been using the professional learning community model. We became a model professional learning community in 2019. A year later, we were recognized as one of the top professional learning communities in the state as the DeFore Award candidate, much like schools here in this county. And this is a big draw for me. This is a passion of mine, and it really helped for me to clarify so much about our purpose and to give us a very clear direction on how to achieve that purpose. And as I said in an earlier interview, the idea that answering 4 questions and always having 4 questions in the back of our head has made our job so much more profoundly just clear and just easier to understand what our role is and how to achieve what our goals are has been amazing to me. And so through this process, I have helped many other schools. We've had schools that have come to visit Lander Valley High School. We've gone out to visit other schools, and I've worked with schools across the country trying to help them become professional learning communities as well. And I think there's just so much of the things that we've already talked about, whether it's the recruitment and the development piece, come from this. And our teams know, and our staff members know now, if you're hired at Lander Valley High School, that you're going to be on a very rich team, and you are going to be taken care of, and you're going to have a built-in mentor, and you are going to be able to be a very high successful teacher. And I've got sheets that kind of show the ability and our success that our teachers have fostered through this process, and the awards and accolades that they've achieved because of this process. And so I am 100% convinced that up to this point in my 23 years of education that I've never been so clear on a simple process of running through on a daily basis to ensure that all students learn at a very high level. And I think it's super important that we continue this process here at Hot Springs County School District, because you guys have all seen those results as well. It's merely impressive, and the other schools that are following suit have seen the same kind of success. There's websites that are dedicated to it, and the research is abundantly clear that this is the best steps for our students and process for our teachers, and answers a lot of the questions that we're asking today in one simple process. So I'm happy to guide and lead that to the best of my ability.
Great. And same question, Steve?
Well, I think I would agree with everything that's been said. I think the value of PLCs and keeping a laser-like focus on those 4 questions is integral to the success of students. Having said that, I think a lot of that heavy lifting has already been done by this district, and the proof is in the pudding. When you look at how you score on YTOP, you can see that you guys have done the work. You've put in the time to make those things a priority. So from my standpoint, what I would want to do is ensure that we're keeping our eye on the prize, that we're not getting comfortable with maybe feeling like we've reached the goal, that we're continuing to look in a growth mindset and continuing to revisit those questions, revisit our standards, make sure that we're aligned with what's best for students. And so I don't really have a whole lot to add to that, because I think, like I said, I think the heavy lifting's been done. My job would be to come in and hear what teachers need to continue that work so that we don't become stagnant in it.
Great. And then Jason?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I sure can. We have been operating with a PLC mindset in the district and growing in many ways. What is your understanding of the PLC culture, and how have you specifically used this to improve your district or building?
PLC's at the root, and you heard these gentlemen talk about the 4 questions. What do you want students to know? How you're going to respond when they don't get it? How you're going to respond when they do get it? That's the roots of professional learning communities. And professional learning communities, since Rick DeFore developed them years ago, has really grown into districts like Thermopolis, bigger districts where people can have common assessments to collaborate on. All Algebra 1 teachers collaborate on Algebra 1. But in districts like this, you may have a varying grade level team collaborating vertically, and you may be answering those questions. And so that work obviously has a very strong foundation here. Achievement is showing it those things. It is a district goal to expand professional learning communities into all professional settings or all stakeholder settings. For example, the board of directors or groups of principals or other professionals. And I think the questions have to change some for a professional learning community culture when there is a goal of 100% PLCs. And the question becomes, what are some commonalities that we can agree on that we in this professional learning community setting can identify, and now can we as a team figure out how to improve upon those commonalities, whether it be board governance, whether it be the PLC of the 3 head principals in the district. What's a commonality those folks can talk about and then improve within their settings? For example, behavior matrices among the 3 buildings, the elementary, middle, and high, starting to use similar language as the students matriculate through. I think all those little things in a PLC-driven district are things that have a vast improvement, not just with the achievement, but the way that things are being ran and the way that things are being governed. PLCs, they are a nice baseline of understanding all that we do, but there are also underpinnings that need to come with it. The norms of collaboration that you would find in adaptive schools, having some set norms of presuming positive intentions, being able to pause and listen to other people's varying viewpoints on a type of issue, and then ultimately arriving at a level of consensus, meaning we as a team working together on this have a way better chance of improving this common goal or item that we're working on. And I think in Thermopolis, SW1, there is a really strong start on that, but I think especially taking a look at the 4-day week, there's going to need to be a lot of professional learning communities with external stakeholders like this. The planning, what do the Fridays look like? The longer days, Monday through Thursday. The potential movement of PLCs to Fridays or time off, so folks have more time for their planning and more time for the students. So PLCs, the way that we do business, not just answering the 4 questions, what do we want them to learn or how are we going to respond when they don't get it? That's the roots of PLCs, but also using the PLC model to really move into the future and develop and work on the goals and things that I know where this district is heading, all while maintaining a level of expectation and excellence with achievement. 2 schools exceeding expectations, some of the highest ACT scores in the state, setting the bar. It's going to be critical that the PLC process is able to maintain that as these shifts, a new superintendent, happen, maintaining the areas of excellence.
Okay, great. And the next question, and Jason will, I was going to say, since you have the mic, in your opinion, what is the value of co-curricular and extracurricular activities for students in the community?
Well, if it's similar to other districts in Wyoming, it's vital, because here's why. Probably 85 to 90% of the students are participating in something, co-curricular or extracurricular. And the research is undeniable that students who participate in co-curricular or extracurricular, they're performing better across the boards. And they're learning those essential conflict resolution skills. They're learning the 21st century skills of what it means to be part of a team, to be part of something. Whether that team is speech and debate, I enjoyed visiting with that sponsor today, but it's learning all those 21st century skills, and it's also learning how to overcome adversity and just preparing for life after. And I think they are vitally important. Can you reread it so I can make sure I answer it completely?
Sure. In your opinion, what is the value of co-curricular and extracurricular activities for the students of the community?
It's invaluable. And without regurgitating the rest of my answer, some of those students who are in pre-calc or the Math 1400 at the high school, which I know that Thermopylae is offering, maybe those students aren't there if they don't have to be accountable to be there, so that they're eligible to participate that night or on a Friday. And so they're interdependent, and they're extremely valuable, and they're the heartbeat, the hidden curriculum of this community and others.
Thank you. Would you like me to read the question again? Okay.
No, I just wish I didn't have to go second or third on this one, because Jason did such a good job answering that question. But I think it goes back to his statement that they're invaluable, and I learned that just today. You guys should be just boasting with pride, because you can't put a value on the experience that your senior is going to have as the president of the state FFA. That's something that's bigger than we can ever talk about. Like, that is a huge, huge deal. And those are the kind of opportunities. That didn't just happen this year. That's a myriad of things that have happened in development. And I'm guessing that she's involved in other things. And all of those things add up to this experience that's going to be huge. And that's what we've got to look for, is what are these random niches and different areas in which we can get kids tucked into so that they want to come to school every day. They want to excel at school every day. And they're going to excel, because as Jason's talked about, when we know that kids are involved in activities, well, they're taken care of. The kids that I worry about at Lander Valley High School are the kids that are not in activities yet, because they're the ones that are still not quite taken care of, or that I got to make sure that we're got an eye on them, because they're not having a coach check in with them each and every day. They're not having an advisor check their grades. They're not having all of these things that happen, and building those skills and doing all of the things that you're able to do through those curriculars. And so it's invaluable, and I think we've got to do everything we can to make sure that we have the most robust offering, and you guys are doing that. Like, it's amazing what you're already able to offer to a school and district your size. And so, as always, it's a continuous improvement cycle, so how do we do better? But Thermopolis is probably also jumping through the roof, because we celebrated several state championships this year. They're crushing it in this area, and our kids are excelling. And when you have those kind of teams come home from state, guess what? Monday at high school feels pretty darn good. And Tuesday feels pretty darn good as well. And all of a sudden the elementary kids are like, man, I can't wait to be so-and-so. And they're going to stay in school until they get to be so-and-so because so-and-so shook their hand last night at a basketball game or at a wrestling match or at the FFA contest. And so that role modeling that happens through these kind of activities and the exposure that our kids get through these kind of activities is simply invaluable, as he said. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I picked a bad time to realize I had a hole in my lip. I spilt my water all over myself, so I apologize right now. I just want to reiterate what they've said. I think activities are the heartbeat of the community. I think communities revolve around the different activities that are happening within the school. I think it's important to remember that every kid has their crew and their cause, and we need to celebrate those equally. So my son's involved in he likes to play football. He's not really good at it. He's big, and that's about all he's got going for him right now. He won't like me saying that, but anyways, he's involved in that. He also likes playing the viola, and I put just as much excitement about him playing the viola as I do him being involved in playing football. So I want to be his cheerleader, and I want to be all students' cheerleaders, and I know that students being involved in something helps them be successful. You can't tell me otherwise, and so I think everything we can do to support that, and like when I've watched your school board meetings, I saw the basketball team just came in. You introduced them, is that correct? Just recently, maybe it was February? No, it was March. Which one? Anyways, celebrating those achievements of the different teams and things, I think those are huge. And they give kids that crew and a cause. I think a crew and a cause gets you a long ways. And just as Jason had stated earlier, there's a lot to learn from failing. When you talk about championship teams at every level, there's only one, and lots of them fail. And they learn lots of lessons from that. It's not necessarily a bad thing to fail, as long as we're learning something from it and failing forward. And I think that's the things that activities provide. So,
Great. Okay, the next question. What strategies do you plan to use to build meaningful connections with the community and the district stakeholders?
sure, I think first of all is being present, being out there, being seen, being approachable. It's not always fun. Sometimes we put our own, like, what's important to us over maybe what's important for the district, and so sometimes a passionate parent will want to talk to you about something that maybe they disagree with you on, and it's just as important to hear from those people that disagree with you, because they're your barometer. They help you figure out what's going right, what's going wrong, how can we improve, and so I think being available, being seen, and understanding that not everybody hears in one way. So making sure that we understand that when people, maybe we've thought we've over-communicated, but they weren't ready to hear what we were saying, when they finally come to the table and are ready to hear, ready to listen, that we approach that the same as we would maybe the first time that we talked about those things. And so meeting people where they're at is huge, and listening and just being present, I think, is what's going to help someone find success in this position. So.
Thank you.
I would go back to the extracurricular question for a minute, only to say that I'm glad I never did theater or choir, because these lights are really hot and they're really bright. And so I have a lot more respect and admiration. That was not a cue to turn them down, but I have a lot more respect and admiration for any kid who stands on this stage for any length of time. Like, holy smokes, like this is serious. To that end, I think you guys are already doing a lot of cool things. It's how do we continue to improve that? The stakeholder community group is already going. I've read the minutes of that. I think that's a really vital piece. But I think there's also like finding those more intimate moments, and whether those are at extracurriculars or whatever the case may be. I have a lot of conversations on the baseline of a basketball court. And I have a lot of conversations on the bottom bleacher of a wrestling mat, right? And I have a lot of conversations on the fence post at a football game. And literally at a track meet last night, I had way more conversations than I ever imagined, and I was at that track meet for about 2 hours. So I think it's very imperative that we're a part of that community and we're at those events and we're cheering on the kids. And we know that as a result of being there, people are going to come up and have some conversations, and I'm inviting and encouraging those. But I also want to create deliberate times where people have a chance to meet with me, and I don't know what that would look like, but we have an excellent lobby just outside of this wonderful auditorium here, and brought in a little quick lunch and all those kind of things. We could do the same thing in the morning with donuts and do all kinds of things. We could meet people outside of the school district, because often it's intimidating and could be scary for people to come into the school. And so having those things at other venues and at public or private businesses and doing those kind of things at coffee shops, et cetera, can help to encourage or at least give people the opportunity to have those conversations directly with me and to be able to move those things forwards, or other stakeholder groups. So the principals, the athletic director, whatever the case may be, is just really how do we make ourselves available. But I think it goes back to the original question when we started this as well, which is we've got to portray ourselves in a way in which we're approachable and that we're active listeners, we're good listeners, and that we're actually going to follow up on some things. So when I have meetings with parents at our Parents in Education meeting, I always do a to-do list, and we always do those follow-up items and what are the action items, and that's the first thing I report back to the parents is what are those action items that you asked me to do, what did you want, and we're going to make sure that we follow through on those action items so that when we're having conversations, they mean something, they're being heard, and we're following through on those. It may not always be the answer they want. It may not always be the direction that they want, but they will definitely be heard. They'll definitely be listened to, and the communication will be upright and professional.
Okay, I think the baseline to this answer is effort. And I think you have to be willing to participate. And there are lots of ways to participate in the civic organizations, trying to attend some lunches, networking with people. And I can also see participation as this. Tracy and I, over the years, our children played in the 3-on-3 basketball. So participate. Maybe you're volunteering, maybe you're helping out, you're contributing. And I think there's a million ways that you can get out there and become known and help and create those avenues. In a more formal setting, I think it's about effort. You have to intentionally seek out parents. And I believe in this day and age, in the technological era, our parents that are probably not making it to parent-teacher conferences. They're not making it, and some of the students that may not be participating in an extra or co-curricular. I think you can intentionally reach out to those folks more in an intentional way. I think you, in a professional setting, can have those parent advisory groups once a month to have them come in and set an agenda. Again, another type of a PLC, where you can work with those external stakeholders, not just parents, to find that common ground, find things that we all can work on together, sustaining the incredible student achievement, but also working on some of the other things that we know we need to work on. In terms of internal folks, because it said staff members as well, the question, I believe, it's a commitment to being present and being part of their daily activities as well. Going out and visiting with them, checking on them, making them feel valued, and really, you're right, listening to what they have to say and identifying those patterns and things that as a district you can begin to respond to. Because if you're out there enough, whether it's the external and internal stakeholders, those patterns are going to emerge. And then I think as a leader in the district, again, with your leadership teams, with the board of directors, with the community, you can start to identify and go at those patterns and improve them patterns. And it all goes back into recruiting, retention, sustaining the already great achievement that has been built, and identifying areas that can potentially be worked on, improvement. And I think I'll just leave it again, and I've said it 3 times, but it's about effort, and it's about willingness to do that, and it's about commitment.
Great, thank you. Okay, Brad, please describe your experiences with special programs such as special education or vocational education.
Yeah. never a day goes by where that's just not part of the job, right? And it's a huge piece. And our student services director, our case managers, and our coordinators, and all of the individual education teachers who serve students with special needs. We meet on the most regular basis. It's just part of the deal. The students that have the highest needs are going to have the most frequent meetings and conversations and need the most assistance. And it takes a team. It takes a huge lift to be able to provide for those students. And we've been able to do that. It's a huge lift. There's no doubt about it, because especially by the time if it gets to the high school level, it's been in there for a while. So I think a large part of that is addressing it and dealing with it at an early age and trying to make the most gains that we can possibly do and make sure that we're meeting the needs of every single student every single day. And if we run it just through the collaborative team process, through the professional learning community model, I think I don't want to say it takes care of itself, but it's a heck of a good start to making sure that we've got those kids taken care of. And as we toured the district today, I have no doubt that that is already well in place and things are moving in a really positive direction. And kids are definitely getting their needs met and taken care of. And so to me, it's how do we continue to make sure that we are active in those meetings, and I need to be a part of those meetings and be a player in all of those things so that I can make sure that we're doing the best that we can as a staff to provide for those students, because they're depending on us and their families are depending on us, and we need to make sure that happens. As far as vocational programs go, we know the reality is not every kid's going off to college, and that's okay and that's fine. What we want is college, career, military ready. And so what are we doing for kids to make sure that they are prepared for one of those three areas when they leave this Hot Springs County School District #1 in its high school? So when we start in K and we end in 12, what have we done for that kid to make sure that they're either college, career, or military ready? And we need to adjust, and we need to reflect, and we need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of each and every student as we do that. And so having a wide and robust offering of vocational programs, which this district already has in place, and continue to improve on those. I heard about the community work service piece where coordinators are working with people that are placed in jobs out in the community. I don't know the details of that, but I think that's also a really good step. And so really just looking at all the different ways that we can make sure that they have the 21st century skills, those soft skills, those job embedded skills that every kid needs, and then fine tuning those around the certain needs of each and every student to make sure that they're successful as they move on from this wonderful place to their next wonderful place.
Great. Okay, and Steve?
So I don't know if it's better to be the second, third, or first. I feel like I'm going to echo a lot of what's been said, but the one thing that stands out to me in this regard is for our district, we have a vision statement about success at the next level. And I think that addresses every kid in our school, because it really personalizes what does success look like for this kid at the next level. And for a lot of our kids, that it looks different for every kid you talk to, and our job is to help kids achieve that, help them achieve success at the next level. And that's getting them the services they need in an IEP, or helping them be a part of a program that maybe we don't have at our school. Maybe it's an auto shop class and they can't take that at our school. Can we look for partnerships out in the community where they could get those skills if that's something they want to pursue? And so I think a big part of this question is, how do we help kids achieve success at the next level? And I think all of the things that have been mentioned are things that we would want to do, but also looking for partnerships to help them achieve those things. So.
Great, thank you.
To answer the first part, some of the special service programs at one of the elementaries where I served, number one, worked with some really great leaders around me, people around me that I have learned from. But in some of those processes, the building intervention teams, I know here I've seen some acronyms, response to intervention, or MTSS, some of the things that are going on. And it goes back to PLCs. When students are struggling, what do we do? And I think that's where these things begin to come into play. Oftentimes, we can get them the help they need prior to maybe making a decision to have a student tested to see if they have a disability and may need an individual learning plan, an IEP. But I think there's a lot of things in place that I have experienced and worked with and developed with excellent leaders around me that I have learned from. I also know some good things are happening here with the daycare in terms of child find by another service working on, let's identify students before they come to us and begin as kindergartners of maybe having a disability. A lot of those things are in place. I've had a fair amount of experience working with those things as an elementary principal and a high school principal. Not to take too much longer time, as a high school principal, we were, like he mentions in Lander, we were able to implement some master scheduling issues where students got that remedial and additional help and began some things at the secondary level, because the acquisition of secondary information is different than the primary skills. Worrying about reading fluency, retention, phonics, decoding, it becomes different. That's why they call it secondary education, and really identifying, do students have a deficiency with this content area, or do they have some ability deficiencies that you need to take on at the secondary level? So it becomes a little bit different, kind of trickier, maybe complex. In terms of part 2 of the question, the Governor's Ride Initiative, we've been heavily involved in that, pretty good experience there, the work-based learning. I know some of it is happening here, but really have enjoyed sending out students to vet tech, sending out students to the hospitals or to mirror doctors, and some of those internships through work-based learning. I think those are what I would say the future of education. It is expanding, being able to acquire credits from mirroring a doctor, able to acquire credits from maybe a welder in the community, because that's my interest. I want to get those welding certifications. I'm not headed to college. What a wonderful way to get as juniors and potentially seniors out there, and then being prepared, building those relationships and potentially being offered a job right out of the chutes post-graduation. So a fair amount of experience in both of those arenas, and I have a lot of excitement about the CTE arena, career and technical education, because that's what my bachelor's was in. And I'm really excited about the Governor's Ride Initiative, the profile of a graduate, developing those soft skills, being on time, working with others. That's some interest that I have strongly bringing to the table, and not taking us till 5 tonight.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Okay, so the next question, and we'll start with you, Jason, is what is your management style, and how do you feel you could effectively manage staff throughout the district? So for the administrators, office personnel, teachers, paras, bus drivers, custodial staff, etc.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question for me, because I'm not going to stand up here and say I manage one way, because I don't. I think every circumstance requires different type of approaches and different type of management. We talk about the goal of 100% of the people involved in this district being part of PLCs. You don't really want to be a PLC member and go in there and dictate. That's just not a management style that is conducive to making PLCs function the best that they can function. You're one voice, you're an equal player, and you're adhering to the norms, letting others put ideas on the table. However, as the leader of the district, there are some times where you have to take charge and make decisions. You're not going to have a committee to make a decision. And an example that I would offer, times of crisis. There could be times of crises determining we're going to identify a lockdown, or we're going to put some things in place to protect children about recess and things. You can't take the time sometimes to make committee-type PLC decisions on those. You have to take charge, and that would be more of a bureaucratic leadership style. And so you have to recognize what kind of leadership the situation calls for, and you have to understand and try to enter into a leadership role that fits best for that situation. And sometimes that may mean, too, and all three of us have mentioned it multiple times, you may have a concerned stakeholder. You may have someone concerned that arrives and needs to visit. Your leadership style is listen. You need to listen, and you need to gain an understanding of the facts of the situation and go from there. And it may be a different leadership style, how that is handled. So any one leadership style, I don't think it's like students in the classroom. And I see you ladies back there, students in the classroom. That's why you differentiate. You change your teaching modalities between direct instruction. Maybe you do group work, maybe you do hands-on. And I think leadership, there's application in leadership to how we teach our children. One size doesn't fit all. And I think that's critical of today's leaders.
Thank you.
I guess I view this as a continuum, and I see on one end of the continuum is micromanagement, and on the other end of the continuum is a hands-off, laissez-faire approach to management. And I think that, as Jason talked about, there's situations where you slide on that continuum. I'm going to stay away from, as far as possible, as the micromanagement side and try to be somewhere to the other side of that continuum. And really what I'm trying to do is to develop leaders to be able to make their decisions in collective collaborative teams and feel empowered and emboldened to make those decisions and to feel comfortable and confident to make those decisions. Because that's what my role is to develop other leaders. And as I'm developing teacher leaders, and I'm developing classified leaders, and I'm developing other leaders, whether that's in the community, in the schools, in the district, in the school board, whatever that case may be, I feel that's a big part of my responsibility. And so empowering and emboldening those leaders to be able to make the decisions that they need to make. With that being said, as Jason mentioned, there's a time where I have to make the decisions, and I'm completely comfortable and capable of doing that. And then I look at that in even a different way, as sometimes I'm going to need some input to make those decisions. Sometimes I'm going to have to make those unilaterally. Sometimes I'm going to work with a committee, and the committee is going to make that decision, and so forth. And so I think it's just how do we approach each and every individual problem. But I think the overall emphasis is the more that I can put the power in the hands of the people that are on the ground, in the classrooms, in the buildings, each and every moment when the situation occurs, and that they feel confident, capable, and empowered and emboldened to make confident decisions, I think we're going to have a way powerful school district, and something that I'm going to be proud of and continuing to raise and create leaders. I've said in an earlier interview that I've had the privilege to help 8 different people get through their mentorship as far as principals, so people that are going through the practicum and those kind of experiences. And in each one of those, I've hopefully got better in each experience. I was probably really bad at it with the first one, and I hope with the last one I've been a little bit better, but it's my changes have been essentially giving them more and more and more and more. And instead of me saying things, asking questions, allowing them to reflect, and then moving forward.
So I think for me personally, my leadership, I think I've tried to show everyone that I work with that I'm not above them, that I'm willing to get my hands dirty and do the tasks that need to be done, and I'm the first one to step in and clean up the puke in the hallway or in the classroom. Those are all things I've done, and I think when you show people that you're willing to get your hands dirty and be a part of the solution, I think that builds trust. And I think my leadership style is built on trust and clarity. I hope that when people don't know where I'm at, they're going to be able to say, hey, I know how Steve would feel about this because I trust him, and I know he's been clear on this in the past. He's always going to put students first. He's always going to look from what's best for students and what's closest to the classroom. And those are going to be his guiding principles. And then trust and listen and be willing to get your hands dirty and do the work that needs to be done. So that would be my leadership.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the next question, how do you ensure transparency in financial operations?
Well, I think pretty much everybody's salaries are public knowledge. I don't think any of that would be hidden. I think as far as how we do business, I think, again, clarity. We make decisions closest to the classroom. If it comes down to this is going to affect students in the class, or this is going to be maybe a new route bus, we're probably going to lean towards the classroom because that's where what we do. We serve kids academically, and if that's the decision that needs to be made, those are tough decisions, and nobody wants to have to make those. But if you always have your guiding principles for that, I think from a business standpoint, you're going to be transparent, and people will. It's when you're all over the place making your decisions that it leads to that mistrust and lack of clarity, and that's where the problems arise. So I think being clear, always having guiding principles for how you utilize funds, I think that leads to a well-run and a trustworthy program. So.
Yes, Brad.
The key here for me is that budgets are confusing, and the paper they're printed on are confusing, and they're not super user friendly most of the time. And I think as educators, the ones who do understand them really well, but maybe we don't do the best job explaining to others what they actually mean and what we're actually doing. And so I think to me this is just a transparency and communication piece again, is how do we break this down and make it super clear on what we're doing? Because sometimes when you're talking through budgets, and if you've ever been in those June and July board meetings where we're doing the final rundowns of budgets, I'm not sure that anybody knows what's going on sometimes. And so how do we break those down and make them just a little more simple so that we can bring clarity and bring community to those conversations and bring transparency? And I think that's the other part of it, is that we need our community. A lot of the grants and a lot of the federal monies require our community to help us make decisions on how to spend those dollars. And so being able to bring the people to the table and clearly outline what the conversation is, what it is, how are we looking at spending this, and gathering input and seeking advice and support for that, I think helps to add to the transparency piece of this. It's an issue, I think, everywhere, because those dollars are hard-earned and coming from people in the community, and they want to make sure that we're investing them in the right work. And so the more that we communicate, and the more accurately and the more clearly and the more specifically we can communicate and break that information down into user-friendly sense, I think that will go a long ways into relinquishing some of the concerns of what's going on, because I have no doubt that 99% of the schools are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing with those finances, yet nobody really has a clear picture of what that looks like. And so being able to break that down and communicate to those people who are concerned is definitely a key part of this position.
Yeah, it's a pretty tricky question, because there's a lot there. You have the guarantee. That's what the district gets from the block grant from the state for the number of students that's enrolled in the district. And so typically what you see with the guarantee is, generally speaking, 80% of the guarantee goes towards salaries. The other 20% is operational. That operational is keeping these very bright lights on me right now, or many of other things. What are we doing for our curricular resource and our professional development resources and those types of things? I think transparency starts with the monthly financial reports to the board of directors, whether that's a consent agenda or it is a report that I believe the board should receive every month. Here are the expenditures going out. And you can generally speak, here's the 80% salaries, but here's the other 20%, the expenditures going out. Let's say a team of teachers went to professional development in Casper, they should see the expense of that report. And I think that encourages transparency. There are a couple of other funding things, the consolidated grants that come in from the federal government, IDEA. Every district receives some funds for the special ed students that you have. You receive Title I, Title II, based on at-risk populations, those types of things. There needs to be financial reports and very close calculations what's happening with the consolidated grants as well, outside the guaranteed block model. And oftentimes, a lot of those are supporting professional development, but a lot of those are also supporting salaries to paras. And sometimes the community may not know, how's that person's salary being paid for? Is it being paid for with a grant, or is it being paid for with the general fund block grant? And so financials, monthly reports that are public records. If it's reported to the board of directors, I believe that should be a public record that any patron or someone can come see. I know annually, for being a public entity, that there is a required annual audit. And I think those audits are also, the district auditing report is a very important component of transparency. Again, communicating when the annual audit is happening and communicating the results of that audit. There's 2 large cities in Wyoming, Casper, Cheyenne. All the rest of us, I think, you got Sheridan, we're smaller communities. And one thing that the auditors always say is the segregation of duties. You may not have enough checks and balances within your district to say multiple checks and balances, good stewards for taxpayer money. And so it is incredibly important that personnel, multiple personnel, is checking off and okaying the expenditures, not just one point of person. I think those are incredibly important things for transparency and trust, especially in the model like it is in Wyoming. Our friends down in Cheyenne, they are taking a look at recalibration, maybe removing certain things from the model or enhancing things in the model. But again, understanding what's happening with recalibration, understanding what it does to our block grant, and then understanding all the off-model expenditures, everything wrapped up in one. Here is our operational bottom line, but we need to be able to provide every expenditure of every taxpayer's money when those things are asked for and then needed, and we need to be responsible.
Great, thank you. Okay, Brad, we have seen substantial growth in our district in the last 10 years in many ways. Please explain what growth has occurred in your district or building directly because of your efforts.
That's a tough question because I'm not sure directly because of my efforts, directly because of the amazing efforts of 100 people that work in my building. Lander Valley High School is a super proud and super great learning community that we have done some incredible things. But as I said in an earlier committee, none of that work is what I give myself credit for. Simply just grateful that I was along for the ride and part of a team that is able to move when challenged with the idea that are we doing what's best for kids, and realizing that other people from other places are doing better than we were. They took that challenge seriously and they ran with it. And so through my time just before I took over as principal, we made a transition to a new block schedule. The impetus of the block schedule was to create time in the schedule to be able to build intervention time in for our students who were struggling to succeed. So when I became principal, I inherited a system that had a 90-minute block for intervention time. That was the clarity I got from that. So we got to work and built what the SRB time, which is the intervention time, is now. It's a continuous improvement process. It's not perfect, and we're constantly revisiting that. But those times and the new schedule and the following of the professional learning community model, the professional development that's went through that, has led to some amazing results. And I have some pamphlets that I've shared with other interview groups that shows the data. We've had all-time high in our ACT rates. We've had all-time highs in our graduation rate, have an all-time high in our AP rate. Before we started this whole process, advanced placement at Lander Valley High School, a handful of kids took. Last year, we gave over 300 and something tests to our students, and over almost 70% of our students succeeded with 3 years or better. In previous years, we were in the 20 percentile of success in those areas. So we've had a lot of things that we are super proud of. But the reality is like you guys know, and sometimes can be frustrating, like you never arrive. It's never good enough because somebody's kid is involved and you always want better for them. And so it's a continuous improvement process, and you just go back to the drawing board. We did this, but what do we do now? What do we do now? What do we do now? And that's, I think, why I'm interested in working for Thermopolis and Hot Springs County School District number 1 is because that culture is here. How do we continually improve to make sure that the services we give next year are better than the services we gave this year, so that we can continually grow and achieve and excel for the betterment of all kids, and that helps our communities and that helps our country overall.
Thank you. And then Steve?
So I don't know how much you know about Star Valley, but from Smoot, which is the south end of our school district, to Alpine, which is the north end, it's about 50 miles or more separation. So quite a diverse bunch of small communities that all funnel together at the middle school level where I'm at currently, and trying to grab those kids where they're at and help them grow. We realized that we weren't doing a good job of providing interventions, tier 2 and tier 3 supports for those kiddos. So we built in intervention times, tutorial times, where kids could get the support they need to achieve at the same level that their peers were doing. And then in addition to that, an area that we saw where we were struggling is mental health. And so we were able to get a counselor at the middle school that was specifically assigned to the middle school. And I think that's critical to helping kids with safety. And then also just empowering all of our teachers to recognize things like the crisis cycle, how to address a kid that comes to you with those kinds of problems. I think we've done a lot from the mental health side to support our students. And so I'm very proud of that piece of it. And I think right now, one of the projects we're working on at the middle school level is what are we doing with technology? I think we're starting to see more and more kids disconnect from being part of a social face-to-face kind of connection, and we're trying to limit those and do what's best for kids. And so to solve that, we're involving parents, getting parent support, and teachers, and just all stakeholders being a part of what it looks like to get kids to disconnect from their technology and reconnect with each other. And I'm proud of that piece that we're working on right now.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough question because there's a lot of areas you can talk about for growth. And I'll just give a couple of examples. In a few years ago, 2006-8 range, when I was the elementary principal, I worked at an elementary that was not meeting adequate yearly process. Now we talk about exceeding expectations, meeting those things. But back in that era, it was adequate yearly progress. And I was able to work at that elementary, and we were able to finally get to the point where we were meeting adequate yearly progress. And I believe some of the things that we did with curriculum mapping, before we became a PLC district, we were talking about what do we want the students to know, and mapping out that curriculum, having those tough conversations against state standards, really figuring out what we needed to teach. And I think those things pointed that school in the right direction. The next journey, Green River High School, we took a look at really high failure rates amongst freshmen. And so we brought in a freshman mentoring program that addressed every freshman was assigned a mentor. We addressed the high-end filled classes at the time. Probably most filled class was Algebra 1, maybe physical science. We implemented some things and maybe some front-loading strategies to help those students a higher success rate passing those classes, the freshman mentoring program. And I'm really proud of the achievement outcomes during that era when I served, and it yielded some of the higher graduation rates in the state of Wyoming that we were proud of, and kind of a standard that the district still boasts about till this day. One thing that I wanted to focus on my answer here, and I know it's touching the surface because I talked to a few instructors at the Green River High School. I know we have dual and concurrent classes for 1400 in math, 1405. What does that mean? Children in the system are getting that head start. And one thing that I am really proud of, recent work at Green River High School, we scratched the surface of the acquisition of college credits while you were a high schooler, and that program has exploded. Working with those counselors, the administration, it's a project that I was able to be a part of, that I'm really proud of. And now the amount of students walking out of there with 3/4 of their freshman year in college completed, or even a couple of students now that are touching on walking out of there with a full associate's degree, getting a dual associate's degree and their high school diploma. I'm super proud of those programs. And working up through my career, one other example, I know that, hey, it's nice that Thermopolis has approximately 50 kindergartners coming in, maybe another small graduating class going out. So it's going to put the numbers in the right direction if we keep the ones that we have. But I'm really proud of the work that, as the assistant superintendent, Green River has seen a massive decline in students from 2017 until now 2025. In fact, student enrollment numbers are as low as they've ever been since 1991. What does that mean? It means a whole lot of stress, but I think the offices at Central Office being able to figure out creative ways through attrition, creative ways to pinch those pennies. I talk about the 80-20, and creative ways to keep programs intact for students to maintain the level of excellence and deal with a huge downward trend with enrollment is work that I am very proud of, work that in many cases was able to point up and has been about a decade long. And I know it appears that student enrollment has been fairly static, which is a good thing, slightly downward trending the last few years. I may be wrong on that, but the district needs to be ready to deal with those things, all the while maintaining the level of excellence that you folks out there are coming to expect from your leaders and expect from the district. It's going to be tricky, but it can be done.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're at the last question. So Jason, how would you work to align the community and Board of Trustees to ensure that district policies reflect a shared commitment to what matters most, students and their education?
Well, I think, most districts work with the Wyoming School Board Association and Brian Farmer, and there are sample policies all day long. But like Washington, D.C., some of their policies don't just automatically fit Wyoming. And we know not all of the policies down there automatically fit all 48 districts in Wyoming. So I think the number one thing to someone new coming into the system is being that listener, looking for those trends, things that you can, through policy, improve. One example may be our leave policies. I think there's some autonomy around that, but can our leave policies enhance maybe absenteeism with staff, or can they also create that time where staff needs to be gone, that work-life balance? Because I think that is incredibly important. So I think there's one way through policy that you can improve working conditions through staff to help retain them, but also maintain a level of forwarding the educational process with students. And just saying Cheyenne's policy fits Thermopolis or vice versa is not the way to do it. There are other types of policies that are more rigid, that are probably Wyoming laws, the parental rights policy. There are policies that we are locked into based on legislation at the state level and the federal level. But again, there are some nuances, and you need to do your research, and you need to be able to understand what is best for this community, and finding the policies that fit the culture and the expectations of the community, the staff, and ultimately best serving students. That's a question I could stand up here all day long on, but you can identify policies that aren't bound by state statute or law that you can work on to improve for students. Maybe the way that the district goes about curriculum adoption, the way that the district goes about decision making, the way that the district sets its priorities. All those are policies that are ongoing and need to be reviewed, and you can align those policies with the voice of the community and try to fit the culture of the town. I guess I'll finish with this. One way that you can do it is establish a policy committee. You can have certified staff, you can have support staff, you can have board members, you can have external stakeholders, and through that committee, you could do a monthly review of policy to identify, okay, here's areas we want to take a look at. Next step, we would have Scott take a look at it up in Powell for us. Next step, does it fit? Are we violating any laws? But through that committee, bringing to you information, hey, we've got a policy here and it seems to be negative impacting children or negatively impacting our staff members. All right, let's look at it. Can we fit that policy better to serve our needs of Thermopolis? And let's make sure we don't violate any laws. That's why Scott comes in. And then we can go through a process. But I think a committee on that is my experiences and one of the best ways to go about it.
Okay, thank you.
Would you mind reading the question for me, Marianne, please?
Oh, sure. How would you work to align the community and board trustees to ensure that the district policies reflect a shared commitment to what matters most, students and their education?
Yeah, sure. You have my time. I think so much of this is by having that mission, vision, values, and goals set and established first. The board really needs to have that conversation on what their collective commitments are, what are we looking at for mission, vision, values, and goals, and setting those goals. Once they have those in place, and that's a huge piece of the superintendent's role, is to helping guiding them and making sure that those are all set in place so that it makes sure that the goals of the students and students first and ensuring high levels of learning for all students are met. Once those are in place, then we make decisions based off of those. So when we're talking about policy, how is this going to help support our mission? How is this going to help support our vision? And that's how our principals need to make decisions in their office. That's how teachers need to make their decision in the classroom. That's how I will be making my decisions in my office. And so I think it's really having that structure. When we set the mission, vision, value, and goals, we get community input. So we get their values, we get their understanding, we get what they want. But we also have this steadfast commitment to every student every day and doing the best that we can for high levels of learning for each and every one of them. And so when you set that as kind of the beacon, when you start to talk about policies, we can start examining policies under that context. And so however the policies fall out, that's the way it is. The reality is if you look at a school board in a historical sense, the whole purpose of the school board is to make sure that the community values are represented in the school. That's the whole purpose of the school board, in my opinion. And so being able to make sure that we navigate that correctly and that they have kind of where the school needs to go, and then getting the community values and making sure that we're making decisions based off of that in perspective of our goals is a huge piece. And really it goes back to a lot of the other questions we ask is how do we bring in that community input? So when the board has a meeting and they ask for public input, I would really hope that when we have agenda items that are pertinent and relevant, that we have the community there to offer that input and offer that insight so that we can make sure that our board of trustees have heard from their constituents, the people who have elected them, and that they are making the decisions based on the community values of this greater community. And so I think as we work together in concert, there's a lot of cogs that have to spin together, and we have to continue to grease those gears and make sure that they're all running and operating effectively, and that we don't chip some gear teeth out of there and all those kind of things to make sure that we have a smooth operating machine. But the steadfast part is that we have a beacon that we're going to make sure all decisions are made through, whether it's policy or internal decisions, to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for kids each and every day.
So I believe the Wyoming School Boards Association is currently doing a policy audit, which a lot of districts then take those policies and adopt them as their own. That's great at the state level, but at the community level, we want to make sure that those policies, as was mentioned, reflect our community. And so I think as the district, and I've watched your school board meetings, you've been doing policy audits, I think it's really important to make sure that stakeholders have a seat at the table in tweaking those policies to meet the needs of your community. If they're not, if we're just saying, well, that's what the Wyoming School Boards Association recommends, we're just going to take that, we're really not addressing the needs of this community. And so I think the more people involved in that, you want representatives from all stakeholders to be a part of making those policies fit our community. And I think the board's job is to set policy. My job is to see that those policies are carried out. So if I have to carry out policies set by the board, I dang sure better believe in them. And if I believe in them, it's because they were created and meant to fit by stakeholders in this area. And so I think that would be how I would bridge that relationship between school board and policy and the community.
Great, thank you. I want to thank the candidates for spending this hour and a half on this warm stage with me. And I want to thank everybody who attended. And I want to encourage everybody to fill out the community forum feedback form. And it does have a QR code, or there are copies at the entrances. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.